Here we go again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LIBERcast, the 39th episode of the LIBERcast. And I want to begin and thanks everyone for tuning in and partaking in the project and all the guests that I have. So grateful to have you all, guys. Thank you very much. And I'm going to bring up some things there. I want to acknowledge Caroline Riley Shadow Work Community. Her website is a course on shadow working, and I suggest everyone to go take a look. If you have curiosity for it, if you are initiated on it, and or if you are an experienced shadow worker, there's stuff for everyone there. It's brilliant. Caroline Riley does a great job in this course. So thank you, Caroline, again. Here we go. I'm having David Greenberg. Welcome, brother, again for a second episode. Thank you for being there. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Fred. It's great to be here again.
Okay, I have doubt that you heard me. There's something I wanted to bring because I think there's this pattern of these cults that are preaching for magical thinking and the false laws of attraction and all these things that this information is it's very good for the people who are desperate for a change. And what I mean by that is when you come from another cult, let's take the example of Christianity. You come out of that, and then you're going to another religion that will bring you more beliefs, more illusions, and this salvationist approach to reality and determinism. So I wanted to bring these few words before we're starting. So David, please tell us about your work and where we can get it.
Absolutely, Fred. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you again for having me on a second time. It's just a pleasure to be back on. People can find my work at Freedom Vibe Art, freedomvibe.art. That's the website. And I share content that I create as well as content from other creators, including this podcast and others. It's a great place to learn what the heck is really going on in the world, especially for people who are like us, who want to have a true awakening, who want to really live in a truly free world, and basically upgrade the reality significantly, and take advantage of this beautiful gift that we have of free will. So freedomvibe.art is the website.
Here you go. You have a Facebook page, YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, people can find me from the website. I have links to different media, but basically I'm on, if you search freedomvibe.art on just about any platform, you'll find a YouTube channel. You can either search it under my name and with Freedom, the easiest way to find it. We should also be restreaming this to that channel. And you can find me as David Greenberg Anarchist. That's my handle there. And I also have a page, freedomvibe.art, the same name. And I cross-post on a couple of platforms like Odyssey, Float, 3Speak, Twitter, Instagram. So I try to post as many places as it makes sense. Okay, Fred's talking. There's a little lag, so I'm going to try to downstep my
yes
video bit.
So
all right.
I think it's gonna be a good show tonight, and I think it's worth very much to have a deeper look into this phenomena, and for the people who are new to this concept here, it's you're up for a treat. So please, can you explain to us what is the difference between magical thinking and the true reality, the true, when we're taking the action versus taking a meditation or a prayer or a magical thinking? What's the difference between them?
Yep, and that's what I'm going to get into in my presentation. I'm not sure if you want to let me, you want me to let the cat out of the bag early or not.
Yeah, sure.
But let me. Okay, perfect. So I tried to come a little more organized this time. I want to thank Fred for encouraging me to create an actual presentation. Let me see how I move forward in that. Okay. So just a brief thank you again. I also wanted to mention just real briefly, this is kind of an aside, but someone who from my audience actually made a donation to me today to my work. And I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate that. It's very special. Doesn't happen very often. I'm not going to name this person because I don't think they wanted to be named, but they obviously know who they are. And I really appreciate it. In fact, they told me they were going to donate a few weeks before. They were prepping me, and they followed through. They stayed true to their word. So I really appreciate that. That does make a big difference. And I want to encourage people who are watching this. Look, I know that people are not everybody who's watching this is broke and on the street. People do have a little bit of income. So if this work is important to you, make donations, not just to me, but to anyone who's doing this work. Contribute almost like you were paying for something that you deem valuable, right? Because yes, we can obviously live in a world without money. That's a whole separate conversation that we can have at some point. But as long as we're living in a world where money is a primary resource for getting things done, then us having access to the resources is going to make a difference. So I just wanted to say that special thank you, because that happened today. And I really do appreciate that. So the reason why I chose this particular topic to speak about is because I have a lot of firsthand experience with magical thinking. I'm someone who engaged in magical thinking for a large part of my life. And as we get through this presentation, I'm going to share anecdotally some of the consequences of thinking that way, just to give you guys the firsthand. And of course, synthesizing that with a general, using the trivium and just a general understanding of how this works in reality. And I think that magical thinking is a major obstacle that's in the way of the great work. You know, it's a major obstacle, and it's something that we do need to pay attention to, and it's very, very ubiquitous. And our opponent, however you want to call them, the dark occultists, the sorcerers of psychology, however you want to call them, they know this, and they peddle this thinking very intentionally. They sell it. And as we get into this presentation, I'll explain why I think they're very successful at selling it, because understanding that is also going to be important for us to get out of this. And I think the good news is that the solutions are actually fairly simple. Doesn't mean that they're easy. Things that are of value in life rarely are easy, but the solutions are very simple. I think that's actually the good news. That's the silver lining, as it were, that really makes it worth it. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say, a lot of people start their presentations with a little bit of caveat, so I just want to throw in my version of that. Check in with your intentions. Like, why are you here? Why is this important to you? You know, because the intentionality behind what you do, the information you take, and then ultimately what you do with it is going to drive the result. I also want to encourage people to ask better questions. And this is something I actually did while I was preparing this presentation, because I realized as I was going through it that if I could keep asking better questions, I would get more and more to the root causal factors, but also like the root level understanding and not just a surface level understanding. Right. So I think this is a discipline that can work well in any presentation. And I've, thankfully for having gone through this exercise, I learned that. So I want to encourage you as you watch this to ask better questions as well. Don't just get stuck at the surface level where the ego tends to get stuck, but go deeper. Of course, you're 100% responsible for what you do with this information. And I'm probably wrong about at least one thing that I'm going to say here today. So, don't believe anything I say. Do your own research and then figure out if what I'm saying is actually true or not. And that graphic is from one of my recent videos. I think it was called "On Being Offensive." So just to answer the question now, what exactly is magical thinking? And it's I'm going to give an exact definition in a second, but if it's easier to think about it, perhaps if this is the first time you're hearing this term, to think about it in its different manifestations or related concepts. So if we think about prayer or praying to a God in a religious context, like, please God, do this for me, bring, help my child, etc., all these prayers, that is a form of magical thinking. The law of attraction, as it's taught principally in the mainstream, not the true, what we can call the true laws of attraction, but the mainstream version is also a form of magical thinking, as we're going to see. Wishful thinking, of course, manifesting, which is almost the same, is similar to law of attraction in the New Age circles, but it's kind of this concept of manifesting. And then just daydreaming in general. These are all different flavors, as it were, of magical thinking. So in the end, magical thinking is really this kind of naive belief that you can affect reality, you can affect change and manifest in reality, into physical reality, just by thinking about what you want to manifest, and then perhaps adding in some usually positive emotions to that to emotionalize it. So thinking about it over and over again, think about mantras, for example, or affirmations, and then adding in some emotion. This is really what magical thinking is at its core. So some specific examples of magical thinking, and there are many, many. These are just a few to kind of prime people's thinking. Again, healing illness or injury through thought and feeling alone. Thought and feeling, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but these things are important, but that's not enough. Here's one that I ran across a few times, especially in the New Age: prayer or meditation to remove bad karma. This is, believe it or not, Fred and audience, this is actually a thing. There are videos out there, and you can search for them, where people are saying all you have to do is listen to this or say this, or some variation of that, and you can literally remove your bad karma.
Bohemian Grove. Anyone?
And they're trying to remove it before they even do anything, which is even more of a form of magical thinking. Here's a subtle one, but one that's played in my own life, is when people make very sudden or drastic changes to their eating habits, and then they expect that, oh, my body's just going to adapt magically to that there aren't going to be consequences. And this is something, again, that I've lived personally. Removing toxic people. This is a big one in cancel culture, or whatever they call it now, in postmodern thinking. If I just remove toxic people, that's going to solve the problem. I just need to ignore them / remove them from my life. Of course, manifesting money. This again goes back to the whole law of attraction. We'll talk more about that in a second. Praying for world peace. I'm going to pray for world peace. That should be enough, right? God wants us to have world peace. So if I pray hard enough, then it should happen. Here's one. The police will protect me. Magical thinking, that if the police are there to protect me, and if I just think about the police as being that protecting force, then that's the way it is. Meditating for freedom. If we just get a bunch of people in the room to meditate, then that's enough to create freedom in the world.
Actually, I have a little something that I can say about this. Here in Canada, we had a lot of um, gatherings of people, and some of them, I don't know where their reasoning is coming from, but they're starting to gather together and meditate in front of the institutional building for freedom. It's, I mean, do we have to go like, for an example, just like that? No, you're gonna meditate the tyranny of your government away. You know,
Yeah.
sit down and do nothing. Essentially, this is what it means. It's like
Yep.
hopelessly meditating on things that you cannot fucking change by doing nothing. Here we go.
Amen. Amen, brother. And I'm going to, as we get into the presentation, I'm going to explain more why people fall for that thinking. We'll get into it a little more, but ignore the negative. This, of course, is a huge body of work because it's one of the major tenets of the New Age religion. And but here, think about it. For example, with the people know, if we're not lying to ourselves, we know that the extent to which child sex trafficking, pedophilia, ritualistic child abuse, and abuse in general, we know that it's going on a lot more than is visible. And yet many people feel and believe that if they just ignore it, if they take their attention away from it, that somehow it's going to go, it's taking the power away from it. Right. Again, we could talk a lot about that because that is part of a religious system, but it's also an example of magical thinking. Right. Ignoring people or circumstances that one doesn't agree with. Again, it's kind of similar thing. If I just ignore you, you're toxic. I don't agree with you. I don't
Or the
believe
one
what
the one I heard lately. Oh, there's nothing as bad experience of good experience. Fuck. Oh my. This is a good example of it. You know. are irresponsible. Sorry
Yeah.
to I've interrupted you.
No, it's important. That's why I put the ellipsis at the bottom, because I mean, this list could be endless. Just, these are just some examples that I came up with to kind of prime the pump. But, think about it in your own life. Be honest with yourself. Think about it when you've engaged in it, but think also about how many times you run into it, in other people. That should give you an idea of just how prevalent it is. Right? Magical thinking, I think, is actually very closely related to solipsism. It's not the same as solipsism, but solipsism being that belief, that completely delusional belief that reality is just going on in your head. Like, this is all in my head. Oh, there isn't actually anything outside of me. Well, if you truly think that way, if you even partially think that way, if you even entertain that to a degree, that opens up the door to magical thinking. Because if you're God, if you're everything there is, if it's all emanating from you, then of course all you have to do is think in order to manifest, because you're it. So I mean, it is very closely related, and one could say that it's a slippery slope. Like, someone who engages in magical thinking is becoming more of a solipsist, perhaps, and someone who's solipsistic is almost certainly going to be engaged in magical thinking. So there is a very close relationship between the two. So moving here. A lot of people are going to be familiar with this movie called The Secret. I, of course, watched it, as did many people, thinking at the time that it was a great movie. I really thought it was a great movie at the time. That just shows you where my mindset was at that time. I'm not going to, I'm going to be honest about that. Going back and reviewing it, not necessarily in entirety, but reviewing like clips from the movie, outtakes, it's very clear that movie is very heavily promoting magical thinking. It's basically a treatise. It's basically a how to think magically kind of movie, and very little else.
It's spiritual enslavement.
Yep. Yeah, it's like that last cul-de-sac, and the timing is brilliant because it came out, in 2006. I mean, the timing of it is it's not an accident, right? Nowadays, there's a plethora of gurus who teach magical thinking in one form or another, and each one of them does it in a different way. Some of them, I think, I'm not going to be here. I don't know these people personally, so I'm not going to come on here and say whether they're what we could call useful dupes who actually believe what they're teaching, what they're peddling, or they are intentionally deceiving people. I think some of them are. At least a few of them here are intentional deceivers that have been planted in our culture, to sadly, hint, hint, in a very sad way, confuse people and mix truth with lies. That's another thing they do. These gurus, they'll mix in things that are true with the lie to get you to buy it, because no one's going to buy the lie if it's naked, right? So it's just to give you a sense of how prevalent it is in common culture. I would say, just based on my own experience and talking to people, even in everyday life, and just interacting with people, and also seeing what's going on through the internet, I would say that there's a real epidemic of people who believe that magical thinking is actually going to allow them to manifest people, events, circumstances into physical reality, right? I think, this is a known thing, a known quantity. So the question then becomes, why? We want to ask better questions. Why is magical thinking so ubiquitous? Why is it everywhere? How did it come to be this way? Well, one thing about magical thinking is it's very seductive. And a lot of things that entrap us, they are that way. They are very seductive, right? And if we aren't putting on our higher thinking caps, then we can fall into that trap very easily, right? And what we'll see is that actually magical thinking is the perfect mindset for people who are mentally lazy, who aren't willing to do the work internally, right? Why is that so? Well, think about it. if you can think magically and create things, there's no real responsibility. There's nothing that you have to give up. There's no sacrifice. There's nothing that you have to put on the line to make it happen. It's easy. No responsibility, nothing. It appeals, of course, to the ego's desire for instant gratification. And I can tell you again from my personal experience that being a slave to instant gratification is one of the main ways that we are enslaved. So this kind of thinking appeals very much to someone who is in that vibe. It doesn't require any effort at all, except maybe to say some words out loud. Minimal effort. So it's great for people who are actually lazy. Again, it goes back to that avoiding negative thoughts and feelings. Avoid the negative, avoid the negative. And it's especially alluring to young children, in particular those who are not being continuously taught these occult sciences, so that they can format in their formative years, they can format their mind in a way that they're not going to be fooled that easily. Right? So they can okay, so it's going to be a little bit of noise here for a second as someone's coming in the house. Bear with me for 1 second. Not a problem. A little bit of enthusiasm there. Okay, so what are the actual consequences of magical thinking? What is the consequence? What is the outcome of thinking in this way? Well, I'm going to first share. Actually, these slides. Okay, I wasn't expecting that slide to be in that order, but not important. Many people suffer by harming themselves and others because they are thinking magically, right? So magical thinking actually leads to self-harm, and it leads to harmful behaviors that can actually harm other people, right? So this is a real issue, right? Now, making it more personal, I was someone, Fred, that I believed in magical thinking for most of my life. And this is why creating this presentation was so powerful for me personally. This photo is from about, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago. So not even that long ago. Just look at my face. You can see the suffering. Even if you don't know anything else about what was going on in my life, you can see how much I was suffering, how much I was out of alignment. It shows, right? I saw it immediately when I went back to the archives to find old photos. And I can tell you that at that time, I remember, at that time, I was very much engaged in that kind of thinking. And now we're going to find out what that created for me. So this is just the price that I paid personally. And this isn't even everything. This is just what I was able to, just came to mind when I was thinking about this. So look at the price that I had to pay personally for suffering, in terms of suffering just from thinking magically. Damaged or lost friendships, many of them, and relationships. And I'm referring to both family, but also other types of relationships, romantic, familial, and so forth. Constant chronic lower back pain because I wasn't getting to the root causal factors. And it's just like constant and always, blaming, external blame. Health consequences in general. I was a heavy smoker for 5 years, thinking I could do that without any kind of heavy, health consequences. Let's talk about financial debt. There was a time when I had money and then no money. Had money and then I owed money. Like huge fluctuations, loss of resources that could have been put to very good use. And instead they were squandered completely. It's very sad. Damage to my teeth, extensive dental work, similar to what was going on with my health in general. 12 years of addiction to pharmaceutical drugs. 12 years. And everything that entails. Like, that doesn't even, that could be a whole conversation in itself, like all the consequences and all the impact of being addicted to pharmaceuticals for 12 years. But just imagine that, right? Oh, if I just take this pill, it's going to solve all my problems. That's actually another form of magical thinking. I didn't even connect that until now. But, thinking I can take a pill to solve my health problems is a form of magical thinking, right? We'll add that to the list. Loss of work and business opportunities. And then, of course, the real price to humanity of what I was doing is I became kind of like we have this term, the de facto Satanist. Well, I became a de facto supporter of the dark grade work. I was inadvertently serving their agenda by buying into this belief system, this religion. And then, of course, failure to step up and serve my true purpose, which, of course, now I'm making my best attempts to do. As long as we're alive, it's never too late. But unfortunately, I lost a lot of time, and I'm saying that in particular to people who are younger, who still have a lot of their years ahead of you. This is your great opportunity, right? This is your great opportunity to learn from my mistake. So that I just shared was just the price that I paid. We're not even talking about in general, right? So let's talk about personal consequences, because obviously we're going to open it up to the context of humanity as a whole, because that is important. But let's just look at general. Like, if you were to generalize what I just shared, this is what a lot of people are suffering from because of magical thinking. So they're more likely to have health problems that they just can't figure out. They can't solve them. They think, if I just keep taking a pill, that's the only thing I can do. Awkward, damaged, or difficult relationships with others across the board. No progress or fulfillment in life. Feeling like you're on the hamster wheel. You're never making progress. You're kind of staying in the same place, never really moving forward. In some cases, not necessarily in all, but in some cases, the ego can become so calcified and so entrenched, and it starts to move into the realm of narcissism, like just thinking that you are God, and that you've got everything you want, you have coming to you, right? And just becoming more embittered as that doesn't happen. Chronic or acute depression, because of course there's this misalignment between the truth and what you keep telling yourself. So that's going to have a toll on the psyche. It can't not have a toll on the psyche, even if we can't say it in words. And then financial and relationship struggles in general. So, and then the ellipsis, because this is, again, just what I was able to surmise. There may be more things that you guys may think of that you can just add to that list.
I just want to add something before you continue your. I liked it very much. By the way, I like your presentation. I like the visual, and I like how clear the information is. Um, so I want to thank you of that, because there's a lot of visual people who needs to maybe sometimes read. So that's good for that. And I just want to bring that there's these things are not all about the consequences of magical thinking. There's things in there that you can find into shadow working, because you have to confront this discomfort of peeling these layers. You were saying that earlier, David, before we go live, that peeling these uh these things that we struggled with for years, and just to and put a positive on that it doesn't mean that you have to continue to feel that. You I just want to tell to people that if you have one or a few of them, you don't have to endure that. You can go over this and heal it by a lot of different ways. Your body, your soul, your mind, your emotions, and most of these things will go away after a time. When you start to, like, really start to take care of yourself. And I'm struggling with a lot of things. I'm not perfect at all. The shadow work is very hard for me. And I wanted to bring that because there's a psychological um underlying there, and this is self-loathing. and the lack of self-respect and ignorance and things like that, that are all cause of that. Not because you don't have the information is available everywhere. You don't have to, you don't have to stay in this state there. You don't have to keep enduring this. I just wanted to that.
That's awesome, Fred. I really respect and appreciate you for sharing that. And it takes courage to share openly, the struggles that we're going through. And um, that's kind of one of the examples, your example, as well as many others from this community, those who are basically pioneering doing this work. I've really been taking your example and their example to heart. And it is hard. I mean, it's hard to admit to yourself, how much you fucked up, but it's also important to do that. And just the fact of being able to recognize that and say it is a liberation of energy, and it starts to open the door. It's not the whole story, because this is, as we'll see, this is a lifetime of healing and a lifetime trajectory. It's something that it's not a one and done. It's something we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives to some extent. Now, yes, we will reach new peaks, and there will be triumphs and there will be setbacks. It's not going to be just on the same level, but yes, what we're signed up here is something it's hard. It's not easy, and that's why I think a lot of people try to escape from it. Unfortunately, it's exactly where the real gold is, where the real gold mine is. So I just wanted to commend you, Fred, for sharing that. And
There's a lot of positive things
yep.
too. I just to make a little interlude. I keep repeating it because it's important to bring examples of, even if you're struggling, in your life, even in the shadow work or in any context of your life, when you get out of it, when you heal it, when you fought with everything to go over this problem, um, this trauma, this trap that you were in, you have to give yourself love and respect, and to have gratitude for everything you have, even if it's not much. If you have your health, if you have your mind, if you can see the sun, if you can go out and enjoy life and having a little, everything is very important.
Very
You have
important.
some people will share their life with animals, some will make children like me, or a lot of people who chose to share and give their life for the betterment and for making this world better, not by changing the adults, but by inculcating and talking about this to children and learning them empathy and morality and the golden rule and all these beautiful things. And this is not only an individual struggle, it is a collective, societal problem. This is a cultural problem. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't share about it, if we don't go to our loved one or relatives, and we're not talking about these things, it well, I can we can do it all the time by the internet. It costs me nothing, to reach all these beautiful people that I have in the comments, and the beautiful guests that I'm having, because I could do something else with my time, you know but I decide to sacrifice for not only me, not only for my children, but my neighbors and the people who are in other countries. And if everybody did a little something, you don't have to do much. Just do the inner work, and then do it not only for yourself, do it for the empathy that you have. Do it for humanity as a whole, and this mindset that everybody call themselves uh, parasites. We have to let this shit go. This self-loathing. It's really a bane of humanity, as much as moral relativism or solipsism. We have to let this we have to let it go. Essentially, we have to let the past go and go forward and go forth into it. There's people outside it. They're like your relative that are screaming for truth. They're screaming for freedom and sovereignty, but they don't understand it. They don't know, and that's why I'm having David to talk about this important the magical thinking. It's man, I love your presentation, and I'm gonna let you continue with it. Uh, so good.
Awesome, Fred. I'm glad you mentioned the gratitude a minute or two ago, because that is so important. Even as we're going through this hard work, it is important to feel gratitude. And I will tell you, as I was starting to figure this stuff out, and as I've been able to unpack these changes and do the inner work, and I started to see improvements, like I would be able to suddenly sleep well when I had been struggling to sleep well for longer than I would even want to admit. And I'm very grateful. For example, today I got a really good night's sleep last night, and none of my back pain was bothering me at all. Have been feeling fantastic the whole day, and I think that's that's kind of goes back to what some of our teachers tell us, is when you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing, then the universe has got your back, and you're going to be taken care of, and it's going to clear the way for you to do what's important. So it is really important to feel, I think, not that feelings aren't important. Of course, we want to feel that gratitude and really appreciate even, especially the small things, because everything is built on those things and the foundation. So I wanted to say that. And then what you were talking about as far as like caring about more than just me and mine, that's a great segue into this slide, because I've talked a little bit about the consequence to me. And of course, through the principle of correspondence, we know that as above, so below, as within, so without. So it makes sense. But now, the one of the main reasons, or the real reason why we're here, why we're doing this, is we care not just about ourselves, not just about putting food on the table, but we actually care about the aggregate of the reality. We start off with that premise that this is not the best that we can do. However, I can tell you 100% that there are consequences to magical thinking. Has consequences on society and on humanity as a whole, to our whole civilization. And those are not great consequences. Those are not going to lead us to where we want to go. They're going to lead us further away from where we want to go. They're going to lead us down the road that we're currently going down, which is accelerating, which is basically more and more enslavement, more control. And as long as we keep thinking magically, then that's exactly what's going to happen. So yeah, so this is where it all ties together to the great work. And I can tell you that the way I see it, again, you can verify for yourself if this is true or not, but the way I see it, this is truth. We have no chance of actually solving this and evolving our consciousness in any significant way, as long as the majority, or even a significant minority of humanity, engages in magical thinking. That's how important it is that we uproot this type of thinking and completely replace it with true manifestation that we're going to now talk about. So the dark occultists, our opponent, however you want to call them, these ancient psychologists who understand how the human psyche works to a very deep level. They understand how to manipulate it, therefore, and how to manipulate our perceptions. They know this. Of course, for them, this is common knowledge. This is common sense for them. And they know that if they can get us to keep thinking magically, it's just going to play right into their hands. So that's why I said earlier that I've been inadvertently supporting the dark work by thinking magically, and they know that, and they love it. So just let that hit home for a second, how you're actually helping their agenda, their dark agenda, when you think magically. So So human suffering, it's not going to change. It's going to increase. Not things don't stay the same. We have the principle of rhythm. So things are ebbing and flowing. We have polarities. So it's not, there is no rest state in reality. So suffering is either going to decrease or increase. And I can tell you for a fact that it's going to increase as long as the majority of people continue to engage in this magical thinking. And that's why I feel so strongly. And that's why I'm putting this together. I wanted to create at least a starting point for us to have this conversation, to start to uproot this and, uproot it one mind at a time, as Mark Passio likes to say, freeing humanity one mind at a time. So this is really the work that we're doing here, right? So the dark occultists, I've already mentioned this. They know they're going to continue to actively promote this because they know it's just going to play right into their hands. Once you understand that understanding alone can help you to start to really shift your perspective in terms of what's going on. So we're here, Fred. I'm going to bet my life on it that you and I are here, that we have something in common, is that, and probably most of the people, if not everybody who's watching, is because we want to manifest freedom with a capital F. We want to live in a free world, not just freedom for Dave, not just freedom for Fred, which isn't, with maybe with a small f, we could argue that there is such a concept. But we're talking about freedom, meaning the maximization of the expression of free will. So it's something that we can quantify. We have free will, but if we don't have the ability to exercise that free will, then we're not truly free, right? So we want to maximize that, because that's what's going to allow us to evolve ourselves spiritually and in the physical realm, raising our consciousness, experiencing greater lessons that and challenges that we can't even contemplate now because we're not there yet, but they're waiting for us. They are waiting for us, and when we're ready, they will be there, right? So that's the unlocking of greater experiences. And challenges the challenges are never going to stop. The whole point of growth at any level of existence is when a plant grows out of the earth, it has to push the earth aside. I mean, there is no growth without some kind of resistance. So it's just the challenges and the opportunities will be greater. And then, of course, it's not going to be all doom and gloom. I've never thought that way. It's also going to unlock, joy, peace, and purpose to a level that we can't, that we can perhaps contemplate, but until we actually experience it, it's like, wow, like that is the real juice. That is the real motivator, that we can just imagine what we can do as a species, as we evolve, and even beyond that, right? It can be hard to imagine it, but it is a worthwhile exercise to imagine. So freedom is so important for all of these reasons. And then each of us will have our individual reasons contextually about why it's so important. So what is the actual formula to manifest these or any conditions into physical reality? Now, I mentioned, if you were paying attention, you remember way in the beginning, I said the solutions are simple. The truth is often very simple. It's so simple sometimes that when somebody hits somebody over the head with it, they're like, duh, that was so obvious, right? The first part of course, we need to know what it is we want to manifest and why it's so important. And that's why I shared a little bit about why I think that manifesting freedom is primary. And you have to decide for yourself if you're really in it for that, right? Because each of us does have that free will. No one's going to force you to think that way, but you have to really decide, ultimately, do you want to live in a free world? What is really important to you? What is it that you actually want to manifest, right? And then the formula is you've got to get your entire consciousness behind it. And when I say you're in consciousness, I mean your thoughts and your feelings, the things that we've already talked about, and your action. And your action has got to be behind it, right? The missing piece. And not just that it's missing, it has to be in unison. Thoughts, feelings, action. And it's actually a cycle, because as we act, that feeds back into our thoughts and we have a feeling about the consequences of our previous actions, which then drives the next action. And when we can apply sustained willpower to continuously act in a certain way, then we're going to actually accelerate that whole process. So we do. So this has been the missing piece. And in this presentation, I'm not going to be able to dive in deep enough to this concept because, again, this is something that we could spend an entire presentation just going through this, and many have. And if you haven't checked out Mark Passio's podcast from number 1 on, that would be a great place to start because he goes into this in great depth and explains it excellently. But just to give you the Cliff Notes version today, the action that is in alignment with the thoughts and feelings is the missing piece. Continuous action, continuous and sustained action towards a specific goal.
What is important there is I want to bring that. Can
Sorry.
you well, yeah, bring that the little slide there. Um, if you miss one of those, if you miss either thought or emotions, your actions will not be in line with your consciousness. You're gonna be stuck into this. Let's say the emotional, the feminine aspect of the brain. Um, if you don't control your emotion, if you're into a neurotic state of mind and you're controlled by your emotion, your actions will reflect that. You cannot only take decision upon your emotions, about your response, your emotional response, or only about your intellect, because there's an imbalance there. And that's a beautiful image. I like it very much because it's explaining the complexity and simplicity. I like it very much. So I think um the emotional part there, I think it's a big one. And most people are in balance in the two hemispheres, means in the intellectual, logical, and the holistic, emotional, imagination will be imbalanced. And the action that coming from that, they're bringing more harm in the non-doing something and in the doing something at the same time.
Yeah,
Because
and there can be, that's a great point, Fred. And there can be misalignment in terms of no action. So we've seen examples of inaction or not taking action, and then not taking action in incongruence or incoherence with the thoughts and feelings. So these are two different manifestations, and they are both significant. And I can't say if one is more prevalent than the other. I just know that they're both different manifestation. Each of them is a different manifestation of being out of unity consciousness. And really, again, the reason why I personally respect and don't poo-poo the dark occultists as an opponent is they are putting their thoughts, feelings, and actions into alignment towards their goals, right? So, and they're just probably laughing at how disorganized we are in general because they're able to put it in lockstep towards their dark agenda. So we need, if we want to, if again, going back to the question, if you really want to live in a free world, it's going to take the same level of unity consciousness towards that goal to make it happen. Right. And this is a feedback loop. So again, I'm going to continue studying this to learn it to a deeper level. I'm sure, Fred, you're going to do it as well. And we could all stand to learn more. But if you could at least for now grasp the concept that it's a cycle, that there's a feedback loop, and that all three aspects, it's very stable. It's that trinity. It's very stable, and it requires that feedback is what allows it to keep building on itself. And that's essentially what we're doing as part of this great work, is we're creating that feedback loop in the aggregate. But each of us individually also needs to be doing that as we step up our own actions individually.
we're not selling anything. That's the
No.
thing there. We're not selling a product. We're not selling a dogma. We're selling. We're offering people the chance to do something about it, about this condition. And if you don't suffer in your life and everything is fine, then good for you. You don't need it.
Yep.
But for most people, we are have struggles and a lot of different ways. Some are family related issues, some people have emotional issues, etc., etc. So this is a clear explanation of the this trinity of the thought and this the wisdom, because we could change the action for wisdom
Mm-hmm.
in this plane.
That's right. Because wisdom requires action. Wisdom is action toward, which is in alignment with truth.
Exactly.
Great. And I created one of the videos that I published recently is actually called Action is Required. And I would love for people to check out, my videos. As Fred said, we're not selling anything. Everything that we produce is free. And it's a labor of love. I put it out there. I'm inspired when I create the videos that I do, the content. It's all because it all goes back to everything we're talking about here is what's the ultimate goal? We want to live in a free world. What does it take to live in a free world? We all need to understand the basic tenets that we have free will, but there are consequences. What are the consequences? Well, if you think magically, the consequences are a lot of suffering for everyone. If you don't think magically, if you start to learn how, first principles, then you can start to end that suffering and you can start to move more into holistic balance. But ultimately, when I made that video is because what I could see, and this was again, I was speaking to myself as much as I was speaking to my audience. All my videos, I'm saying I'm first of all speaking to myself, and then I'm speaking to everyone else. And I was saying, Dave, you've got to take action. It's not enough just to think, it's not enough to just take in the knowledge. It's not enough to even have an emotional response to the knowledge. You have to actually take action. And one person, someone might say, well, what can one person do? Well, one person can do a lot. As we're going to see, there are ways to even amplify the reach of our actions, but every action matters, right? Every action matters because every action has a consequence, at least one.
The principle of cause and effect, and actually
Yeah.
we're living in the realm of the effect, and we should live in the cause, if I understood well.
Very true.
So I think that's I think it's food for mind, just for just this sentence by itself, you know
100%. So how true manifestation works, the formula is first we need to understand that we live in a reality that we're co-creating together. And it's cause and effect, and we can see it playing out in our individual lives, and that's great. And we need to see how it plays out in our individual lives because that's our realms. But it's also rippling out into the greater reality, and it's adding up, it's summing up. It's not necessarily a mathematical formula that you and I can sit down and write out on a piece of paper necessarily, but we can see how it aggregates, and we can see that as more and more people act in a certain way, then the reality starts to shift around that behavior, right? So, and this is why when you have the majority of humanity thinking magically, engaging in magical thinking as we've defined it here, then you get a certain outcome, which is more and more slavery, more and more control, more and more suffering, right? Ultimately, that's really what's happening. More and more suffering from basically butting up against the reality itself instead of harmonizing with it, right? So we need to really understand that reality is co-created, and each of us when each of us takes full responsibility, as I think someone from the audience mentioned, and we start to contribute through our actions. Every single action that we take really matters, and we take it consciously and through a conscious choice to act rightly. And then through our words, which is also a form of action, speaking is a form of action, but it has the power of inspiring others to take action as well. And that's the amplifying effect. And that's why, for example, doing this kind of presentation is so important, because now, out of all the people who listen to this, either live or in the future, even if just one of them gets inspired to go out and do and act differently, then it's a win. right? It's a win. So that's the power of the voice to amplify and to create reality on an even greater level, right? So in order to manifest these specific conditions, i.e. freedom or any other condition that we would want to manifest, we must first embody those conditions internally, right? So we must be,
Internal sovereignty.
yep. We must have the internal, we must be internally in, exactly. We must have the internal monarchy and internal harmony and alignment. And then we're in a position to go out and start to share what we've learned from our new perspective and share those ideas. So every time we get on here, when I do this presentation, it's because I understood something that maybe I didn't understand previously. Doesn't mean I have all the answers. It just means I was able to get something that's powerful and based on truth and principles. And now I want to share it with more people so that others can benefit from it. So that's an iterative process of keep going back, learning more, and then teaching it. The teaching part is very important, not just sitting on that knowledge, right? We're not dark occultists here. We want this information to get out to the greatest possible audience. We want to de-occult this knowledge. So that part is extremely important.
And this is important to give yourself time to
Yep.
heal and accept the truth that you're gonna still make mistakes. You're still gonna uh, stumble on the rocks on the ground. You know, you're not gonna. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about reducing harm, essentially, harm to ourselves and harm to the others.
Yep. Perfection that could be a form of magical thinking too, because it's a form of paralysis. Because if you think things have to be perfect, you'll never take that action. It's actually a
Exactly.
stopper for action. Yep. So important. So the question is, how do we truly manifest freedom in the world? I think you guys are starting to get it. The rewards, of course, the rewards and the sacrifice. I think this is a great way of looking at it, because you're not going to get something for nothing, right? It's just, that's the way the universe works. There's always a price to pay, but it's worth it, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's worth it. Why? Because what is the reward? Well, the reward is we may exercise our free will, right? At all times and places, right? We also unlock those greater realities and experiences that sometimes are hard to imagine it because of where we've been stuck at, but they're there. They're waiting for us. They exist. They can exist, and they do, and they will. And maybe perhaps on some level they have already existed, and they're just waiting for us to experience them, right? So that's the reward. Things that, fantastic paradises that we can't even imagine. What's the sacrifice? What do we have to give up? Well, we don't get to harm ourselves or others. It's really that simple. We don't get to beat ourselves up, and we don't get to beat other people up. We don't get to take away what we need, and we don't get to take away things from other people, and so on and so forth. And we also have to defend ourselves, obviously, because in order for free will to be a thing, that means that the possibility of someone trying to harm us has to be a thing. If it didn't, there would be no context. It wouldn't be meaningless, right? So we do have to defend ourselves. And we also have to be 100% responsible for the consequences, whatever they are. So good, bad, ugly, neutral, semi-neutral, whatever happens, we ultimately still need to be always responsible for the consequences of our actions. And then whatever happens, the subsequent way that we behave down the road will be based on us assuming responsibility for what has already occurred. Right? So that's the sacrifice. And I would argue, this is just my this is not even, necessarily a universal truth. This is just kind of my take on it, is that it's worth it. Okay. So again, maybe this slide's a little bit repetitive for what we've been talking about. But the inner work is always the first step. And I think one of the things I like about the LIBERcast in particular is there's a lot of focus on the inner work. Right? There's a lot of focus on mastering the ego and getting your emotions in check, as opposed to, yes, we need to call out the dark occultists and say what's actually going on and how many people are dying from the jab and this, that, and the other. And it's important to be aware of what's going on in the world, of course, in the world of effects. But
Hmm.
that's not where the real change is going to happen. So one of the things I really like about the LIBERcast in general and in this work is we are approaching that, and we need to continue to do that. So the real work is the inner work. And again, everything I'm saying to you guys, I'm saying to myself. So for me, it's a continuous work as well, aligning our actions in the world with universal principles of truth, with morality, very simple, with the consequences, and then continue to share and teach based on what we've already learned up to this point. It doesn't have to be perfect. This presentation, maybe it could have been better, but I'm sharing with you the best knowledge and best understanding that I've been able to come up to, and the best wisdom applying this in my own life up to this point. And that's enough to keep going, right? Maybe the next time I'll be able to share something even more powerful. Doesn't matter. Just get out there and share it, because the
There's
world
there's a
needs this
good
information.
there's a good exercise that people can do that I'm gonna give you people. Um, the first thing that I want to bring that because Mark Basso keep repeating it. Um, First thing, stop lying to yourself.
Yep.
The delusional part of yourself that imagine that you're gonna get better by doing nothing, that your world is gonna get better by doing nothing, and take a good look at yourself in the mirror and stop pointing outward for all your problems, all your little all your little things that bothers you. Stop pointing outwards and point yourself. Take a good look at yourself in the mirror, because a lot of people have not tamed this ego identification part. There's actually people who are identifying themselves in this culture, in this society, in these subcultures, and these religions, and these affiliations, and these groups, and these boy clubs. When you put yourself there, when you're using ego identification, you are keeping yourself from growing up. I'm not saying to people to stop doing something outside. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you need to do the first thing first, and it's cleaning your own temple. I'm repeating it a lot in this podcast. Do the cleaning of your own room, of your own temple first, because you cannot go into the great work. You cannot go teaching people when you didn't do the work. I'm at the risk of repeating myself. Learning by heart stuff that you heard, it's not inner work. Inner work is taking this knowledge, understanding it, imbuing it in yourself, in your thoughts, and then acting upon it. This is what we're coming back to magical thinking. Even if you're in the great work, if you're in the spiritual communities, this is your responsibility to for the betterment of yourself, to take care of yourself and stop this self-loathing, stop this ego identification, these worldview that are poisoning you. People are still arguing about the roads, you know. Oh, if we don't have tyranny, if we don't have slavery, who will build the roads, you know?
It won't be slave masters, that's for sure.
I mean your people are scared shitless
Yeah.
of of the boogeyman, of the boogeyman. This is how childish people are. They're scared of their own shadow. Carl Jung called it years ago. So this is about growing up. This is about maturing. This is about starting conversation that are awkward, that are uneasing. This is the time to start conversation that are start arguments and debates and talk about these things. Because if we're go if you're if we're I'm we're doing the episode, we're doing the podcast because this is what I can do, because I'm fucking alone in here. I'm fucking alone in Quebec, in Canada. I don't know anyone who are doing the great work. I don't know anyone. Maybe John who commented earlier, who is like swimming in this just like me, who he's making like great comments. Thank you, John, by the way. So just imagine this burden that we take on ourselves, this sacrifice, the time sacrifice. This time is only, is your only currency. There's nothing else. So what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your 80 springs that you're gonna live through? Well, 80, maybe 75. Depends. If you're a man, you're gonna live like you're gonna die younger. Well, this is what they're saying. But I think this presentation is on point. I mean, I need to do it in French. I have to do this. Take your work. If you allow me to do it, I'm gonna do it in French, and I'm gonna
Absolutely. This
fucking
is
slap people around.
this
Uh,
anybody who wants a copy of the presentation, let me know. I'll maybe we can share a link to it somewhere.
sure. If you agree with sharing, this is fucking great. I appreciate it. I appreciate your work. Thank you very much for your work. It's awesome. I don't want to cut you anymore.
Oh, you're good, Fred. I love it when you get fiery and passionate. That's one of my favorite parts about the LIBERcast and your work in general. Is I think I look up to that. I often say, I've even said in some of my videos, like I feel like I'm not offensive enough. Like I feel like I'm not passionate enough myself, and so I really appreciate that. And we need to hear more of that. And that's the voice of truth speaking through you. And I love it. Just, never hold back in that way. That's awesome. But yeah, that's the real passion. That's what's really got us motivated here. And I'm almost done here with the presentation. Um, Really, it's just to kind of put that emphasis back on the fact that we, that our manifestation is kind of like, that principle of correspondence. We're like the small creator with a small c. So we're not God, we're not the creator, but we have a similar, we are able to create things, right? So we need to respect the fact that we are, a correspondent reflection of creation, and also respect the fact that this manifestation is a skill set, just like any skill set, that's going to take a lifetime of mastery. This is by no means something that, oh, great, Dave gave a presentation, now I've got it. I'll just, homework for 1 week and I've got it. It's like, no, this is you signing up for a lifetime of mastery, whatever that is for you, whether it's 75 years or 100 years or however much time we've got left. It is a lifetime of mastery, right? And it is absolutely going to be required if we want to unlock that freedom. So again, go back to that principle, ask yourself a good question if that's what you really, really want. Because I know that's what Fred wants. I'm don't need to be convinced there. I know that's what I want. That's what my desire is. And I know that there's others out there in a similar vein, each of them doing putting their best efforts out. And I do commend each and every one of them. Like I said in the beginning, I really thank everybody who's doing this work as well. So this is the key, folks. We've got to move past that magical thinking, past that instant gratification if you want to actually get to the gold mind. And I can tell you, from my perspective, worth the effort. You
It
decide if
does.
that's the same for you. It's definitely worth it.
And it's incredible. You open my eyes on a few things, and I want to thank you personally for your beautiful work. Um, but I want to take the time, and I'm doing it every time. But to every great workers, to every people who are struggling with spiritualism and spiritual struggles, and all these people who are sacrificing their time to improve and try to spread truth and freedom through words. I want to thank you. I fucking love you guys. I fucking do. And it's you don't realize it until you're that your 2 feet on your 2 feet on are in it. You know, I've been at the risk of repeating myself again. I've been there for a decade now, and I just started to teach and doing this podcast, and I understand I understand the ramification and the sacrifice that it needs, and it's important to express this gratitude because we don't have much from the outside. You know, people don't like great workers very much. You know, we're not there to come to put people in bubbles and comfort them. Pretty much, we're here to shake their heads and shake their shoulders, and then give them this a metaphoric slap from time to time. Um, but I it's incredible the growth that you can go through in a matter of months or years. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful, positive thing that you can get through this, and sometimes you have to the sacrifice on not only time, but you're gonna stumble upon people who will have a strong um, negative emotional response to your work, and it it doesn't worth abandoning because people are attacking you, because people are trying to humiliate you. People will come from everywhere. If your work is based on truth, you're gonna have struggles, you're gonna have people who will come to you and challenge this, not challenge your belief, challenge the principles that you acquired with the time.
Absolutely, Fred. Can I just mention you did a recent episode with Maria West, I think it was, and
Yes.
I got to tell you that episode was on fire, and she specifically lit a fire under my ass. And now my feeling is like, bring on the hate, bring on the confrontation. And I actually took to heart what she said, and now I've made it part of my efforts to actually go out and speak even more broadly. Like, I want to get on as many podcasts as possible. I don't do my own podcast, but I want to be a guest on others, and I want to be more. I want to face that confrontation. Whereas I realized when she was speaking on that podcast, it was very personal for me because I could tell. It's like when somebody says something, if you know they're speaking truth to you, it goes right to where you need to feel it in your being. And I was like, she's absolutely right. I'm just creating all this content in a bubble. What did she call it? The echo chamber. I was like,
Yes.
no. We need to be on the front lines. If we have any chance at all of transforming the world, through sharing truth and principles, we got to be more on the front lines. We got to be hearing from more haters. Not that everybody's going to be a hater, but if we're not at least getting into some confrontation, then we're not really on the frontier. We're just kind of in the
Yeah.
comfort zone of speaking to people who maybe already get it, and speaking to each other about it, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to be I for myself, and I'm sure this is true for everyone. Um, we need to be on the frontier, right? Because it is a spiritual battle, and the other guys have an incessant way of getting in front of everybody, and we need to be in front of more people. So yeah, so bring on the hate, bring on the confrontation. That's what I wanted to say. And I'm really glad you did that episode with Maria. I think it was brilliant.
Yeah, shout out to Maria West, by the way. Thank you, sister. Fucking awesome show. Fucking awesome. I had the the more it's going, the more I like this, and the discussion table, that these are my I like it very much. Having stimulating this conversation between, even this week on Friday. By the way, I'm gonna plug my table discussion with these awesome great workers that I'm having, and stimulating in this conversation and sharing opinions, because you brought up, David, the ED echo chambers, and we had this huge problem in these communities, and the spiritual communities, and new agers, and even great workers, and in the spiritual movements. There were these people who were creating uh, tight circles, and then if you challenge them, they're gonna ostracize you. They're gonna gatekeep you.
Yep.
There's gonna be gatekeeping, and aggressive behaviors, and they're gonna attack you with words, and it's very not unusual, because we know this is as above, so below as above. So this is the principle of correspondence in full action. When you and natural law, we could talk about natural law and all these beautiful doctrines that we can learn about, the universal laws and the consequences on behavior of humans, and in the 3D world that we're sharing together. So I want to thank everyone again for being there, and share this awesome podcast that we just did. Thank you, Dave, for this. I mean, we need to share it far and wide, so people.
100%.
It's free. You don't have to do like much. You take your mouse and you share this stuff everywhere. Do you have an Odyssey page, Dave?
Yes, I do. If you search Freedom Vibe, or I guess I'm not sure the best place to put it. I guess we can put it in the comments, but I do have an Odyssey page. If you just go to Odyssey and search freedomvibe.art, it should come right up.
So you can. This is another thing that people can do. It's go on Odyssey. LIBERcast page is there. You want to have the videos. You want to download them and upload them. You go spread the word. And there's a lot of different grit workers. We could like bring them up, but I think the thing is, we can bring up the One Great Work network, and the onegreatwork.com. I don't want to make a mistake about this, um but essentially this is a place where great workers and searchers and podcasters are bringing their stuff all together in this place, and there's plenty of information there. Ignorance cannot be justified in this era of the world, in this era of time. It ignorance isn't a justification. Everything is free. You can have everything you want about anything. So I want to thank um, Caroline for her generosity and bring this shadow work community. I would like to impress people to go there on the Facebook or on the web page that I showed you earlier, and go see there. The information is incredible. It's gonna help you for self healing and things like that, and fighting these demons, and taming these demons. So have a good night. And just before I go, I forgot, I almost forgot about this. This Friday, there's a table discussion at 9 p.m. There's gonna be Nate Cap is gonna be there, Derek. There's gonna be James. There's gonna be Leslie. It's gonna be fucking awesome. So tune in on Friday, 9 p.m. on the LIBERcast. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great stuff.